everyone. Welcome to Listening to Lancaster. I'm Diana Martin with Hourglass, and it's my pleasure to be joined today by John Gerdy, founder and executive director of Music for Everyone, to talk about his newest book, Lights on Lancaster, which examines how the arts have transformed our community. John, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
So, one of the themes of your new book is all about the revitalization of Lancaster City through the arts. And in the preface, you talk a little bit about when you moved here in 1998, the city of Lancaster was a very different place than today. So, as a painter and musician yourself, talk a little bit about your first impressions of Lancaster when you first moved here.
Yeah, and before I answer that question, I'm going to just say plug this. This is my second book that I put out this year. Okay, first one I put out in May is called "The Journey of an Old White Dude in the Age of Black Lives Matter." But this isn't discussion for another time, another webinar. This discussion obviously is about Lights on Lancaster, so I just wanted to get that in though, because it's not my first. I had another book this year as well. So, but yeah, so well, let's put it this way: to say that I was less than overwhelmed with the art scene and how vibrant our community was when I arrived here now more than 25 years ago would be an understatement. I mean, it was clear Lancaster was struggling, in a lot of ways. And I know that's been the work of the Hourglass organization as well, to try to, do things that, strengthen and vitalize our community. But it was pretty slim pickings back then. And one of the things that we have been very good at we have been starting really with Rick Gray, in that we really made a strategic and directed effort and decision to try to revitalize our community through the arts, leveraging the arts, because the arts, they're an economic driver. There's a lot of businesses that if you have a lively art scene, it attracts people downtown, and they not only go to galleries, but they go to restaurants and they go to bars and they go see shows. So it was very, very it was strategic and directed. And I think the community has responded, and we are a vastly different community than we were 25 years ago. I mean, Lancaster's cranking. I mean, we still have our challenges and issues because we're a city. And those issues are real, but in terms of our progress over the past 25 years, it's been extraordinary.
Walk me through those 25 years. Are there certain moments that stand out to you as where you really felt that we were investing in the arts, or certain things that happened that really catalyzed that change?
Yeah, I think, of course, Denny Cox establishing Gallery Row was really a major, major step. And the PCAD, locating on North Prince and the Ware Center, Millersville buying the Ware Center. Organizations like the organization I founded and run, Music for Everyone, popped up trying to promote music as a educational tool, an economic driver, a community building tool. So I think what happened was it started attracting restaurants and galleries and venues. But I think more than anything, there's a great book by Richard Florida called The Rise of the Creative Class. And the basic premise of that is the people who you want to attract to your community, right? The movers and shakers, right? We used to be a agricultural economy, then we became an industrial economy. And now we're kind of in this creative economy, right? Around technology and all those kind of things. And so it's those people who are using creativity and technology and of all sorts. We have to do what we have to try to bring those people to want to settle in our community, right? The creative class, the people are thinking out of the box because, for example, let me give you an example. If you work for Armstrong World Industries, right, years ago, and they decided to pick up and move to Florida, if you worked there and you're one of these creative, the creative class, and you add a lot of value, and you're a mover and shaker in the community, and you uh, uh, love working with Armstrong, and they love you. But back in the day, you would have had to pick up and move with them to Florida, right? Now, the way transportation is, the way communication is, you don't necessarily have to do it. They like me, I was a good employee and I loved them. You could work out something that I could stay here, right? And commute, or just, do a lot of things virtually. But the point is this. Um, that the creative class, or the people who are really making a difference using creativity of all sorts, which I outline a lot in my book. I give all kinds of ways that the creative class and people who leverage their art form and creativity contribute and change communities, impact communities, right? So as a community, you have to think about what are the things, because those people have more choices to live and work wherever they want to live, right?
Mhm.
So you have to ask the question, what are the kinds of things that attract those type of people to want to live in your community, settle in your community, work in your community, and raise their families in your community? And it's things all around the creative arts. It's a lively restaurant scene. It's bars and restaurants and shows and galleries, and a school system and district that values the arts. And those are the kind of things that, when word starts getting out about Lancaster being that kind of a community, wanting to attract those types of people, well, then you're building a network and a strong community, broad and deep community of creatives. And they in turn drive, they're an economic driver in terms of creating wealth and vibrancy in a community. So Lancaster was very strategic and directed about it, and it served them well.
I mean, for anyone, I live in Lancaster City, so I've seen the transformation of, now we have so many great, to your point, restaurants, but we have great galleries, we have amazing spoken word, we have live music all around town, kind of seen that transformation. But outside of kind of just the anecdotal of something, the lived experience we all have with it, how do you kind of measure or quantify the impact that the arts have on community transformation? How do you know if a community like Lancaster is doing it right and we're successful?
Well, I think the proof's in the pudding. The economic return is pretty obvious. I mean, you go downtown, and in the past there were a lot of empty storefronts, not much going on at night, and you can just feel it. But there's also data out there in terms of the amount of economic activity that the arts has generated. Um, but I think it's one of those things. It's more. There's certainly that kind of data, but a lot of, and you can just feel it and look at it, and people are excited about it. And so a lot of it's just sort of like it's a feel. You can see it's just vibrant. It's just cranking, and people are excited to live here and come and work and raise their families here.
Let's jump into a little bit more about the book. So, the book is a collection of essays. There's a number of local creatives who contributed. So, how did you organize this book, and who are some of the voices that are featured?
Yeah, it's like herding cats. There are 34 creatives of all sorts, from hip hop artists to architects to a pediatrician to sculptors to musicians to painters, um, and corralling 34 creatives and saying, "Come on, get your stuff in," and working with them and editing it and trying to organize it into a format that makes sense. It was a challenge. It was this is my 8th book published, and out of all of them, this was the most difficult in terms of the logistics, just getting everybody on the same page. But it's divided into 4 sections, four main sections. One is just about creativity itself, about how you become more creative and what creativity means and how you can leverage it. Next section is about education, how uh, investing in the arts is an educational tool, um, is really smart thing to do. And the reason why that is because every single issue we face as a community, and even as a not just Lancaster, but as a state, region, nation, global community, whether it relates to education or politics or healthcare or the environment, in this increasingly fast-paced and interconnected world in which we live, right, is becoming more complex. The world's just moving faster. There's more moving parts. There's more. So, in order to address the challenges and issues and problems that we face today, we've got to, in this increasingly complex world, we've got to develop in our populace a corresponding increase in creativity, thinking out of the box, thinking at another level. So, the investment in music and the arts, because music and the arts are the most effective tool in our educational and community arsenal to teach creativity. So it's really critical that we continue to invest in the arts within our educational system as well as our community generally. The third part is the third section is an area where I feel it's the next frontier for music and the arts, right? And that's how do we leverage their capacity and ability as an individual therapeutic and public health tool. Mm-hmm. The medical profession is just getting their hands and heads around how do we leverage that. And for example, at Music for Everyone, we do things like we partner with a group called Right Face, right? And what they do is they use poetry to help vets deal with their PTSD symptoms. We partner with them to provide, well, we'll provide you musicians and songwriters, and we'll help them put their music and their poetry to song, right? Because it is, you know, when you talk about the power and potential of music as an individual therapeutic, you're talking about helping, you know, depression, PTSD, Alzheimer's, dementia, and with kids struggling with mental health issues and depression, it becomes even more important because, again, this is a tool that, at the end of the day, it's healing, mm-hmm. and it brings people together and it bridges gaps. So there's a section on healing, how we can leverage music and the arts' power to heal and bring our community together. And finally, the last section is about transformation, right? And how like music is transformational, transforms communities. It's a great example by Heather Bailey, an essay, and she's a teacher at King Elementary, where she's basically transformed the culture of that school one violin at a time. When she came 15 years ago or so, there may have been 6 kids in her, you know, violin string orchestra. Now there's, you know, 40, you know, and it's become cool in that school to play music, right? That's transformational, how it and just how music and the arts has transformed our community in terms of, you know, economic development and where we are now compared to 25 years ago. But the reason and the real power of that is it's because music is the universal language, right? And we talk often about, for example, with Music for Everyone, when we talk about people, it's not really, you're not really investing in music, or you're not really investing in the arts when you donate. What you're investing in is the outcomes and impacts that when you apply music and the arts, those outcomes and impacts are educational outcomes and impacts, positive educational outcomes, and community health, individual therapeutic, economic driver, bringing community together, right? And even social justice issues, because music has been at the center of every social justice movement and human rights movement in the history of mankind. So the point is that, yes, it's about the arts. Yes, it's about investment in the arts. But what it's really about is the community impact and outcomes that investment in the arts reaps. Does that make sense? And you're able to do that broad cross section is because music is the universal language.
And you mentioned the school district of Lancaster, where I think students speak over 50 languages. So it's even more meaningful to have something like music that can bring people together.
That's correct. Yep.
So you assigned out all of these essays to 34 different writers, all in different creative fields. I imagine as you were getting them back and reading through them and editing them, there must have been a few things that either surprised you or some lessons that emerged. What was that experience like?
Yeah, one of the things one of the things that really stuck out to me is as I was going through this, and essentially what I asked them, I said, how do you leverage your art form and the creativity that develops and spurs to change the world? Or if not the world, you don't have to go all Mother Teresa on us, but maybe change your neighborhood or your block. Okay, so that was the premise. That's what I asked them to do. And the more I went through all of that, I realized that I was just scratching the surface with 34. I could have included another 50 or 100 people who are doing this, leveraging their art form and the creativity to change the world, right? Of course, if I tried to include 50 more, my head would have exploded. I mean, it would have been, just crazy. But what I learned is that every one of them had a story to tell, and it it just was really impressive to me about just how broad and deep that those impacts were across the board. I mean, music and the arts in some way, shape, or form can impact virtually every part of our life and every part of our community. So that's why, you know, that's why, yes, we have come a long way as a community in developing Lancaster as an arts community and arts destination, right? And I mean, we're hot. I mean, we're cranking right now. But one of the other purposes of this book, okay, not only to highlight the creatives we have, but is also to hopefully spur community dialogue about the future of the arts and how important it is to continue to invest in the arts and the artists and the creatives who create that art, right? Because just like we used it to build it into a really thriving arts community and destination, if we're not thoughtful and strategic and pay attention to continuing to invest in it, it could easily slip away. So the other part about this book was hopefully spurring some community dialogue about how do we move forward and keep the arts vibrant in our community.
I imagine one of the other goals was probably that maybe other communities could learn from what we're doing here in Lancaster. Is that something that you feel that can other people replicate what we're doing in their communities?
Oh, absolutely. No question. I mean, Lancaster's a great example of strategically, thoughtfully, but then you have to follow through. You got to build it brick by brick. It doesn't happen in a day. But yeah, there's plenty of ideas in the book, plenty of things that other communities could apply in their own community to help, build that, a vibrant arts community. So yes, I think it would be something that many communities could benefit from.
So we talked a little bit about the kind of looking back over the last 25 years and how much Lancaster has changed a lot, due in part a lot from investing in the arts. So where do we go from here? You mentioned there's some challenges to kind of maintaining that vibrant art scene. So what are your hopes for the future?
Well, one of the things I think that we have to do is we have to keep these issues front and center. Okay, we have to keep them on Lancaster's sort of like, let's keep doing this list, right? One of the things that I'm trying to work through my own mind right now and trying to figure out how to implement is we need something. We need an organization, or really what I call more like a think tank that um, you know finds out the needs of our community, does research regarding those needs and potential impacts, um, comes up with strategies for how do we keep things moving along in a positive way, develop narratives that we tell the community, and we use the art, help the arts community become more effective at advocating about the importance of this,
Mm.
because this is one of the things that I've kind of learned uh, through my 18 years of running music for everyone, is that in the arts community, we're really good at talking about how the arts, like, oh, they feed your soul, they bring the humanness of, to the forefront, and all those, those kind of touchy feely things, right? And they're all true, right? They're all true. How it enriches us and all that kind of stuff, emotionally and psychologically, and all of that kind of stuff, right? And I think it's fair to say that artists of all sorts, they understand that intrinsically because they're doing it. But the problem is we don't talk enough about, and the problem is that a lot of times the folks who are holding the purse strings in terms of funding, right, the arts, they don't always get that. They may be more interested in data and outcomes and impacts, right? So we've got to do a better job of, instead of talking about, oh, the touchy feely stuff, we got to talk about, no, this is real. This is real. There's real economic benefit to Lancaster. The numbers tell us that. This is real in terms, there's real educational benefits in terms of test scores and student performance. There's real community health benefits from the outcomes. So it's not just all, yeah, the arts for art's sake. It's the arts for community impact, positive impact. And we've got to get better at articulating that, if we want to continue to, it's like people we struggle in the education community, right? About, should music and the arts be considered an extracurricular activity, a co-curricular activity, or a core curricular activity? But the fact of the matter is, it's really none of those. You know what it is? It's the glue that holds everything together. For example, music is math, music is reading, music is logic, music is creativity, music is language. All of it. It's the glue that holds everything together because it's the universal language. So less talking about how wonderful it is and the touchy feely stuff, and that's all good, but we've got to become more effective at talking about the real, tangible community impacts. And that's something we've got to do a better job of in the future, I think.
Is there any risk that Lancaster becomes, so successful with the arts? We have such a booming downtown that it actually becomes challenging to get your start here in the creative field, that gallery
Absolutely.
space is too expensive, or it's harder to get your foot in the door. Kind of, where do we stand with that in Lancaster?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really a big issue right now.
Mhm.
It's like, we had a lot of, uh, not worn out, but empty lofts and things like that back in the day, and struggling neighborhoods. And then all these creative artists come in and they take them over and they get low rent, and all of a sudden they make it cool and hip and happening. And all of a sudden people start feeling, hearing about what a cool happening, arts center Lancaster is, and more people start moving in, and next thing you know, they start developing, high end housing, and all of a sudden you're chasing out, because they can't afford it, the very people who have made Lancaster hip in the first place. So that's a real struggle for particularly emerging artists.
Mhm.
The other thing is, so that you can kind of price them out and become hollowed out. Will become what I call a faux arts community, right? The other thing we have to do a better job of, I think, is that we tend to invest in the arts vertically, right? In terms of, as opposed to horizontally. In other words, we have one of our biggest benefits and most valuable commodities we have is our diversity. We are a tremendously diverse community, right? And that is one of our strengths. It's a major strength. But we have to recognize that, and somewhere the city's doing a better job of that. Some of the foundations are doing a better job of that. Music for Everyone's really paying a lot of attention to that. But we've got to provide more opportunities for those who've never had those types of opportunities before, and make our impact broader as opposed to investing in one or two or three major arts organizations. We kind of got to spread it around because ultimately that's our greatest strength, our diversity, and we have to pay attention to that. The other thing people talk about, and people might think, well, what's he talking about? But people, we always hear about, well, all the artists are starting to move to Columbia now, right? Because in a lot of ways, Columbia was where we were 25 years ago. And the artists are starting to move there because they got, lower rents and more affordable space. And people say, oh, no, no, that's not a good thing for Lancaster. I kind of disagree. I tend to push back on that because if Columbia, our neighbor, is doing better, right, then we are, right? And we don't have to say that it's either or. It's either you invest in Lancaster as an artist or you create opportunities for artists in Lancaster or Columbia. We can do both. And we should start thinking about, instead of Lancaster Lancaster City being an arts destination and community, we need to start thinking of Lancaster County as an arts destination and community, including places like Columbia, of course, Lidditz, or Solanco, wherever. But it's the more we get and create opportunities throughout the entire county for artists and creatives to ply their craft and provide positive community output and impact, the better. It doesn't have to be either or, but we do have to pay attention to it in Lancaster because we are beginning to price artists out of the market in terms of finding affordable studio space and a place to live and raise their family.
Yeah, you can think of it almost like a hub and spoke that we can.
Yeah, that's a good example. That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, I think just shows the arts really connects to all these other quality of life issues that if we don't think about housing, we might have a detrimental impact on the arts. So
Mhm.
these things really go together. But I have one last question, and then I want to make sure you have a chance to let people know where they can get your book and all those details. Um, One question I sort of came to mind was Lancaster is seen as a destination for the arts. People come in for some, we have big name theaters and things that people really love and appreciate. And then we also have an art scene that is really for the people who live here to express their creativity. Are those things kind of in tension with each other? Do they complement each other? How do we think about building an arts community that's for tourists and residents alike?
Oh, they go hand in hand. They absolutely go hand in hand. The more opportunities we provide for our local artists of all sorts, um, to be entrepreneurs and make a living at it. That's another thing that we have to do a better job of helping our artists understand. Particularly, we got so many young artists who are bursting onto the scenes right now who are just ridiculously talented. And so we've got to continue to provide opportunities for them to grow as artists and support for them to grow as artists and arts entrepreneurs. And if we do all of that, people coming in from out of town, they're going to experience that. They're going to dig that. They're going to say, man, what a cool place this is. So it goes hand in hand for sure.
And besides checking out your book, which is a great way to hear about a lot of different voices from the arts community, what are some other good ways to find some new artists for people listening who might want to hear about some of these emerging arts or get involved in a different way in the community?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's the same as usual, keeping up on, what's going on around town. I mean, there's all kinds of resources to let you know. There's so many galleries and so many events going on. It's hard to keep up with them a lot of times, right? But you can start they can go to Amazon and order my book and hear about what some of them are doing, right?
Yeah,
But
or check out a Music for Everyone event too.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah, it's all good.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, let people know how they can, if they want to learn more, if they want to order your book, you can find more at johngerdy.com.
Mhm.
That's John's website. You can find all 8 of his books on there, including his most recent book, Lights on Lancaster: How One American City Harnesses the Power of the Arts to Transform Its Communities. And we will make sure we link to that everywhere that you find this interview. But yeah, is there anything else that you want to add? And besides encouraging people to read those essays and learn more?
No, I think we did a pretty good job of covering the basics. So yeah, it's I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for being on. And everyone who's listening, you can find more episodes of Listening to Lancaster on our YouTube channel and on our website at hourglasslancaster.org. And um, really appreciate all the work that you do, at, not just in getting all these folks together with their essays and herding the cats for this book, but just for what you do in the arts community. I think so many people would credit the transformation of Lancaster City to the power of the arts. And folks like you have really shown a lot of leadership in developing the arts community in Lancaster. So definitely a priority to keep that strong. So I appreciate all your thoughts on how we can do that.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Take care.